Hello students, welcome to Veda Gate Academy. In the previous session, we have started with the basics of magnetic circuits. In that, first we have started with one of the important interview question, why we are using magnetic field as a medium of conversion from one form of energy to another form of energy, and why we are not using electrical field. And we got two conclusions from the discussion. That first one is, for normal operating voltage levels of rotating machines, producing significant amount of electrical field is not possible. Whereas with magnetic field, even though the current is small, we can able to produce significant amount of magnetic field by increasing number of turns. This is first point. And second point what we got is, as maximum allowable energy density with magnetic field is very high compared to electrical field, for a given power handling capacity of the machine, the size, volume and weight cost of the machine gets reduces. So because of these two advantages into consideration, we are in general using magnetic field as a medium of conversion. And after that, we have discussed about the basic terminology what we are using in magnetic circuits. First we discussed about Oersted principle, and we have seen how to determine the direction of magnetic flux lines with the help of right hand thumb rule. And after that we have seen the basic terminology, like first one we have started with the magnetomotive force MMF, and after that we have seen the definition of flux, and after that we have seen the definition of reluctance and formula of reluctance how to calculate, and we have seen even the flux density, magnetic field intensity and permeability. And after that we have seen the formula for calculation of reluctance and how to calculate the reluctance with some examples. So in this session we are going to start with the Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction. So we are going to start with Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction. So as we know, our father of electrical engineering is Faraday. So what Faraday has done is, in 1831, Michael Faraday has conducted one standard experiment, and from that experimental results, he formulated two standard statements. Those are called Faraday's first law of electromagnetic induction, and the second one is Faraday's second law of electromagnetic induction. So now let us try to quickly see what is that experiment. What he has done is, he has taken one coil having some n number of turns, and this coil he has connected to a galvanometer. And as we know, the galvanometer is used to measure the voltage induced across this particular coil. So this is my coil having some number of turns. And after that he has taken a bar magnet. Let us assume this is a simple bar magnet. And in the first iteration what he has done is, he kept this magnet at the same position and the coil at the same position. And he observed that there is no reading in the galvanometer. In the next iteration what he has done is, he moved this magnet towards the coil. The moment if he started moving this magnet towards the coil, he understands that the galvanometer starts some reading. And after that he moved this magnet and he kept the magnet again at this point stationary. Then again he observed that the galvanometer will not show any reading. In the next iteration what he has done is, he started moving this magnet towards the coil and away from the coil, and if he increase the rate at which this magnet is moving towards the coil and away from the coil, the galvanometer started showing more and more reading. Okay, and in the last iteration, now previously he moved this magnet towards the coil and away from the coil. Now in the next iteration he kept the magnet at this position and he started moving this coil towards the magnet and away from the magnet. Okay, and again he observed the galvanometer starts showing reading, and from this he formulated two standard laws. One is how to produce induced EMF, and the second one is magnitude of induced EMF. Okay, so those are, we can generally call it as Faraday's first law of electromagnetic induction, and the other one is Faraday's second law. Generally the Faraday's first law is used to determine how to produce induced EMF across a conductor or coil, whereas the Faraday's second law of electromagnetic induction is used to determine the magnitude of induced EMF. Okay, so Faraday's first law of electromagnetic induction is used to determine how EMF is going to be induced across a conductor or a coil, and Faraday's second law of electromagnetic induction is used to determine what is the magnitude of that induced EMF. Okay, now first we will try to see what is the statement of Faraday's first law of electromagnetic induction. So according to Faraday's first law of electromagnetic induction, if you see the Faraday's first law of electromagnetic induction, he states that whenever there is a relative space variation or relative time variation between set of conductors and a magnetic field, then EMF gets induced across set of conductors. If you again go through the statement what I have given clearly, in order to produce or generate EMF across a coil, you require three things, basic requirements. What are those basic requirements? First one, you require some set of conductors. And second one, you require a magnetic field. And third one is, you need to create either relative space variation or relative time variation between these two in the sense between set of conductors and magnetic field. So you have to create relative space variation or relative time variation between set of conductors and magnetic field, then you can get some EMF across the conductors. Okay, so again I am quickly repeating the statement of Faraday's law. According to Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction, whenever if there is a relative space variation or relative time variation between set of conductors and magnetic field, then EMF gets induced across set of conductors. Okay, now based on whether we are going to create a relative space variation or relative time variation between these two, generally the kind of EMF induced will be classified into two types. Okay, majorly classified into two types. Now we will try to quickly see what are the types of induced EMFs. So based on are we creating relative space or time variation, this classification is made. So the first one is dynamically induced EMF. And the second one is statically induced EMF. Okay. Now we will try to see one by one what is meant by dynamically induced EMF, how to determine the dynamically induced EMF, and how to determine the magnitude of that, and how to determine the direction of that dynamically induced EMF. Okay, and similarly we will go through even statically induced EMF. Now we will start with the first one, dynamically induced EMF. So in order to understand dynamically induced EMF, first I will give you the statement of this dynamically induced EMF. Right. So all of you be careful while discussing this dynamically induced EMF. So if you are taking the statement of dynamically induced EMF, according to this, whenever a conductor is moving inside a time invariant magnetic field, then the conductor will experience a change in flux linkages and EMF gets induced across the conductor. So again I am repeating, whenever a conductor is moving inside a time invariant magnetic field. So here the term you need to understand here is time invariant magnetic field. So what is the meaning of time invariant magnetic field? So the meaning of time invariant magnetic field is nothing but my flux is not going to vary with respect to time. That means if I try to draw the flux or flux density waveform with respect to time, my flux is not going to vary with respect to time. So that means for all the time from 0 to infinity, it is going to maintain the same magnitude. Such kind of magnetic field we can call it as time invariant magnetic field. Now my question is, in order to produce this time invariant magnetic field, do I need to supply a DC current or AC current? So if you assume the circuit or machine is a linear, as we know, flux equal to MMF divided by reluctance. Already we have seen this in the previous session. What is the formula for MMF? Number of turns into current divided by reluctance. So from here I can say the flux is directly proportional to current. Now if I want to get a time invariant magnetic field, then my current should be, what kind of current I have to supply? My current or exciting current should be a DC current. Okay, if the current is DC, then the flux becomes time invariant magnetic flux. Okay, so now if you see the definition of dynamically induced EMF, so what is the definition? Whenever a conductor is moving inside a time invariant magnetic field, then the conductor will experience a change in flux linkages and EMF gets induced across the conductor. Now we will try to understand more about this particular dynamically induced EMF. relax. Now if you try to see here, let us consider, in order to create a time invariant magnetic field, I have supplied some current, so that I got magnetic field, time invariant magnetic field. So I am representing that magnetic field with two poles L. So let us assume this is north pole and this is south pole. Okay. So obviously magnetic flux, as we know, inside the bar magnet the flux will flow from south to north. Outside the bar magnet, in order to complete its path, its flow from south, north to south. So that means I can say my flux is flowing from north to south. Here if I am saying the term flux, do I need to consider how many flux lines? Do I need to consider a single flux line or 10 flux lines or 100 flux lines? In general, for 1 Weber of flux, I can say 1 into 10 power 8 magnetic flux lines will produces. But we cannot able to show these many magnetic flux lines in the given diagram. So that is the reason I am going to consider, let us consider this is 1 flux line, this is 2nd flux line, 3rd flux line, 4, 5. Let us consider here I have shown only 5 flux lines and I am representing those flux lines as phi 1, phi 2, phi 3, phi 4 and phi 5. These are my 5 flux lines which are flow from north to south outside the magnet. Now what I am going to do is I am going to place one conductor on 3rd flux line. Okay, I am going to place one conductor on 3rd flux line. Now we will try to see how to generate this dynamically induced EMF. As I said earlier, whenever a conductor is moving inside a time invariant magnetic field, then the conductor experiences the change in flux linkages and EMF gets induced across the conductor. And we know that the magnitude of that induced EMF, such kind of EMF I can call it as dynamically induced EMF. Okay, and the magnitude of the dynamically induced EMF will be equal to BLV sin theta, where here theta is nothing but the angle between the direction of movement of conductor and magnetic flux lines. Okay, V bar and V bar. And if theta equal to 90 degrees, we know that maximum dynamically induced EMF will be produces whose magnitude is equal to BLV. Okay, whose magnitude is BLV. Now here for suppose if I am moving this conductor somehow, if I try to move the conductor in this direction, if I move the conductor in this direction, will I get any EMF? Let us try to see. Here you need to understand, in order to produce EMF, do I require flux lines, linking of flux lines or linking of change in flux lines? Obviously, in order to create EMF, I require change in flux lines. Rather than simply flux, I require change in flux. What is the meaning of change in flux? That means you need to simply understand with how many different flux lines my conductor is linking. The moment if I move the conductor, with how many different flux lines my conductor is linking is nothing but, if conductor is linking with different flux lines, if I move the conductor, I can say there is rate of change in flux linkages. Okay, now if you see at this position, okay, if I move the conductor in this direction, then at this instant can I say my conductor is linking with which flux line? 3rd flux line phi 3. After some time, let us assume the conductor is came till this position. If the conductor is came till this position, even at this instant also I can say it is linking with phi 3. Even after some time the conductor will come this position till this position and it is also still again linking with the same flux line phi 3. That means, are you finding any change in flux lines if I move the conductor in this direction? No. So can you tell me how many dynamically induced EMF will be produced in this direction? 0. If you observe here, can I say the angle between movement of conductor and flux lines in this example is how much? Theta value how much? The angle between movement of conductor and flux lines is 0. So here theta value equal to 0 degrees. So how much EMF will be produced? Magnitude of induced EMF equal to 0. Now let us consider a different case. Okay, for suppose now if I am trying to move this particular conductor in this direction. Okay, so if I am moving this particular conductor in this direction, let us try to see. At this instant, initially the conductor is linking with which flux line? 3. Now the moment if this particular conductor came till this position, I can say it is going to link with phi 2 flux line, and after some time it is going to link with phi 1. So that means, are you finding any change in flux lines? Yes. So initially it is linking with flux phi 3, and after that it is linking with flux line phi 2, and after that it is linking with flux line phi 1. So there is, we are going to find change in flux lines. So obviously EMF gets induced across this particular conductor, dynamically induced EMF. Okay. Now here if you observe here, can you tell me what is the angle between the flux lines and moment of the conductor? I can say the angle between flux lines and moment of conductor theta value is equal to 90. So you can say maximum EMF gets induced across this particular position. If I move this conductor in this direction, I can get maximum induced EMF. Are you following? So this is how we need to determine the whether the EMF gets induced across the conductor or not. Okay, so I hope you understand what is the meaning or definition of dynamically induced EMF and how to determine the magnitude of this EMF. Okay, right. Now the point you need to understand here is the same dynamically induced EMF I can able to produce with two methods. Now we'll try to see quickly how to produce the dynamically induced EMF with both the methods. Okay, right. Let us try to move on to the next concept, how to produce dynamically induced EMF. Okay, so to produce dynamically induced EMF, there are two methods are there. First, as I discussed, for suppose, let us assume that this is my north pole and this is my south pole. Here I can assume the flux lines are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flux lines. Okay, and let us assume that this is phi 1, this is phi 2, this is phi 3, this is phi 4, and this is phi 5. These are the 5 flux lines, and I am placing a conductor at this position initially. Now as we know, the moment if this particular conductor is moving in this direction, then what will happen? Obviously EMF gets induced, because here there is a change in flux lines from phi 3 to phi 2, phi 2 to phi 1. So obviously EMF gets induced across this one. This kind of EMF I can call it as dynamically induced EMF. Okay. Now I will draw one more configuration and see whether is there any EMF gets induced across the conductor or not. Okay. Now I will take the same magnetic field. I am creating a magnetic field. Let us assume this is my north pole. Okay, and this is my south pole. And here what I am doing is these are my flux lines. These are my flux lines. Now I am going to assume the flux lines phi 1, phi 2, this is phi 3, this is phi 4, and this one is phi 5. Now I am going to place a conductor inside this magnetic flux lines at this position. Now previously, am I moved the conductor or magnetic field here? I have moved the conductor in the upward direction. Okay, if I move the conductor in the upward direction, there is a change in flux lines from phi 3 to phi 2, phi 2 to phi 1. So obviously dynamically induced EMF is produced. Now instead of moving the conductor in the second case, now what I will do is I will start moving this magnetic field in the downward direction. Okay, magnetic field with a velocity in the downward direction. The moment if I move the magnetic field in the downward direction and I keep the conductor at the same position, then will I find any change in flux lines? Yes, of course I will find change in flux lines. Can you tell me, initially at this position I can say my conductor is linking with which flux? Third flux, phi 3. And after that, if you observe here, the moment if these magnetic flux lines are moving in the downward direction, after some time which flux line is going to linking with conductor, obviously the flux phi 2 is going to link with conductor. After further some time, if I am moving further downward direction, after some time I can say phi 1 is going to linking with the conductor. So I can identify change in flux lines. Okay, so obviously you can say dynamically induced EMF will be induces across this particular conductor, right? So that means you need to understand here one point, that in this case, am I moving the conductor or am I moving the magnetic field? We are moving the magnetic field. In which direction? Downward or upward direction? Downward direction. So I got the same kind of EMF. If you observe, the change in flux linkages in this case and in this case both are same. So obviously I am moving here my conductor in the upward direction, whereas here I am moving magnetic field in the downward direction. So I can say that in machines, specifically in machines, moving the conductor in upward direction is equivalent to moving the magnetic field in downward direction. But in machines we are not going to use the terms like upward downward directions, but in fact we are trying to use the terms, okay, conductors are moving in clockwise or anti-clockwise, magnetic field is moving in clockwise or anti-clockwise. We are basically using the terms clockwise or anti-clockwise rotation. So in that particular terminology, if I want to give the observation from this discussion, we can say that the conductor moving in clockwise direction is equivalent to the magnetic field moving in anti-clockwise direction or rotating in anti-clockwise direction. Please make a note of that point. It is very, very important observation. Okay, so the conductor moving in clockwise or rotating in clockwise direction is equivalent to the magnetic field moving in anti-clockwise direction. So this is how we can able to create the dynamically induced EMF. But in these two configuration, generally I can say, if you are taking out of these two configuration, generally we are going to use this configuration for DC generators, okay, whereas this particular configuration we are going to use in synchronous generators. In both DC and synchronous generator, if you see, can I say my flux is time varying or time invariant? Time invariant flux, okay. So the common thing between a DC generator and a synchronous generator is, we can say that the kind of flux which is linking with the conductors is time invariant flux. And in fact, one more common thing is the kind of EMF induced is anyway dynamically induced EMF, okay. Now, but what is the difference between this DC generator and synchronous generator? The kind of configuration. If you clearly see here, I can say here my conductor is moving or stationary. The conductor is moving. That means I need to place these conductors in a rotating part called rotor, okay. So in terminology, specifically if you go through DC machines, we can use these conductors specifically as armature conductors. So here my armature conductors are moving, so I can say armature conductors are placed on a rotating object called rotor. Whereas my magnetic field is stationary or moving, here my magnetic field is going to be stationary here. So that means I am going to place these poles on a stationary part called stator. So in DC generator, what kind of configuration we are going to use? My stationary conductors or moving conductors, okay, stationary magnetic field, rotating armature. So the kind of configuration what we are using in DC generators is a rotating armature, stationary magnetic field. Whereas if you see in synchronous generator, I can say my conductor is stationary, conductors are stationary, that means we are going to place on a stationary object called stator. So this also I can call it as armature conductors. Whereas my magnetic field is moving or stationary, here my magnetic field is moving. My magnetic field is going to be moving. So the kind of configuration what we are going to follow in synchronous generators is stationary armature, rotating magnetic field, okay, rotating magnetic field. Now the next question is, out of these two configurations, which configuration is easier? So of course we can say that a synchronous generator configuration is easy compared to DC generator configuration. Why? Why synchronous generator configuration is easy? Because if you see here, my conductors are kept on stationary member called stator. The moment if the armature conductors are kept on stationary member called stator, what will happen is collecting or supplying current from this armature conductors is very easy. Okay, whereas if you are taking in DC generators, my armature winding is placed on a rotor, and it is very difficult to collect current or supplying current from these particular armature conductors which are placed on a rotating object called rotor. Because what will happen is, if you want to collect a current from a rotating object, definitely you are going to find either sparking or arcing, okay. So without sparking and arcing, we can able to collect the current or supply the current in synchronous generators, okay, we can able to at least minimize. Whereas in DC generators, without arcing and sparking, we cannot able to collect the current or supply the current through these armature conductors, because they are kept on a rotating member called rotor, okay. Now as I said, we are saying that the synchronous generator configuration is easy, right? That means conductors are stationary and magnetic field is moving is a easy configuration. Then why we are not adopting the same configuration in DC generators? Okay, so why the reason behind why we are not using this configuration in DC generators? Because if you use this particular, I can say in DC generators we need to supply a DC current, right, to the loads. So for that particular application, we are using extra components like commutators and brushes. For working of commutator and brushes, it requires definitely the conductor should be rotating, okay. So we will see, we will have a commutation process will be there. During that commutation process, we will understand without rotating the armature conductors, commutation process is not possible. We will try to understand those points in DC generators. So I hope you understand this particular thing. This is about the brief idea about dynamically induced EMF, okay. So what is the conclusion? Dynamically induced EMF definition: whenever a conductor is moving inside a time invariant magnetic field, then the conductor will experience a change in flux linkages and EMF gets induced across the particular conductor, okay. Such kind of EMF we can call it as dynamically induced EMF, And what is the magnitude of dynamically induced EMF? Formula BLV sin theta. And to determine the direction of dynamically induced EMF, we are going to use Fleming right hand rule. I will explain this Fleming right hand rule the moment if you start with the DC machines. Okay, so at this instant it is not that much important, right? Now this is about the brief idea about dynamically induced EMF. Now we will try to move on to the next concept. Here, make a small note, guys. The point is, there is a similar kind of dynamically induced EMF with small modification is there. Such kind of EMF we can call it as rotational induced EMF. Rotational induced EMF. I will quickly tell you what is the meaning of this rotational induced EMF. Okay, with a small explanation. Let me take, I have a two-pole machine. This is my north pole and this is my south pole. Okay, so and let us again consider the flux lines. Right, so flux line phi 1, phi 2, if it is not visible you can adjust it here. Okay, so this is phi 3, this is phi 4, phi 5. Now here this is one configuration already we have seen. For suppose if you are saying this is my conductor, okay, if I am moving this conductor, let us assume with a velocity of 10 meters per second. Now can I see EMF gets induced? Yes, why EMF gets induced? Initially it is linking with phi 3, later phi 2, later phi 1, so we are finding change in flux linkages, so obviously dynamically induced EMF will be produces, right? And we know that the magnitude of this EMF will be equal to what, guys? BLV sin theta. Okay, if theta equal to 90, you will get maximum EMF. So if you observe in this particular thing, I can see EMF is directly proportional to V. What is V here? Velocity of the conductor, or with what velocity my conductor is moving, right? Here obviously with what velocity my conductor is moving, 10 milli per second. So obviously EMF is directly proportional to 10. Let us consider this is case 1. Now what I am doing is in the second case, I am not going to move the conductor, or let us assume I am moving this particular conductor in the upward direction with a velocity of 10 meters per second. Now what I will do is, apart from conductor is moving, even now I am going to move this magnetic field. I am going to move the magnetic field with the same velocity of 10 meters per second. Now can you tell me how much EMF will be induces across the conductor in this case? How much EMF? Please pause the video and do the analysis. What is the second case I am discussing, guys? Here my conductor is moving in the upward direction with a velocity of 10 meters per second, and even my magnetic field is also moving in the upward direction with a velocity of 10 meters per second. Now my question is there any change in flux linkages is happening in this particular case too? No change in flux linkages will happen. Why? Because, okay, so if it is moving with a velocity of 10 millimeters per second in the upward direction, okay, and even the magnetic field is also moving in the upward direction, always my conductor will link with which flux line? Phi 3. So that means, can I say, is there any change in flux linkages will happen because of this case 2 configuration? No. So obviously EMF induced in this case is 0. But here I am saying that there is a magnetic field and here the conductor is moving. So do I need to consider this V is nothing but, do I need to consider the velocity of the conductor or velocity of the magnetic field? It is not either velocity of the conductor or velocity of the magnetic field. It is the relative speed between the magnetic field and the conductors. Okay, it is what? Relative speed between magnetic field and conductors. That means, for suppose I am considering one more case. Let me take one more case, case 3. Okay, for suppose here the my conductor is moving in the upward direction with a velocity of 10 meters per second. Now I am assuming that my magnetic field is moving in the upward direction with a velocity of some 30 meters per second. In that case, will I find any change in flux linkages? Of course, I will find change in flux linkages. Yes or no? Right? I can able to identify the change in flux linkages. So in this case, the induced EMF is directly proportional to relative speed between the magnetic field and movement of the conductor. So obviously here it is moving with a velocity of 30, it is moving with a velocity of 10, so I can say 30 minus 10. My EMF is directly proportional to with respect to this speed. So the point you need to understand here is, please make a note of that point. Note, if both conductors and magnetic field are moving, then the induced EMF is directly proportional to the relative speed or velocity between the magnetic field relative speed or velocity between the magnetic field and the conductor. Relative speed between the magnetic field and conductor. So this is one of the very important observation you have to remember. So this is about the brief idea about dynamically induced EMF. Now we will try to move on to the next concept. What is that one? The second category of classification is statically induced EMF. So let me move on to the next one, statically induced EMF. So now we will try to first see what is the definition of statically induced EMF, and after that we will see how to determine the magnitude of the statically induced EMF and direction of statically induced EMF. Okay. So now if you are taking the definition of statically induced EMF, the definition is whenever a stationary conductor is placed in a time varying magnetic field, then the conductor will experience a change in flux linkages and EMF gets induced across the conductor. Again, I am repeating the definition quickly. Whenever a stationary conductor is placed in a time varying magnetic field, either it is a conductor or coil, okay, whenever a conductor or coil is placed in a time varying magnetic field, then the conductor will experience a change in flux lines and EMF gets induced across the conductor. Such kind of EMF we can call it as statically induced EMF. Okay, right? So now here if you observe here, I am using the time placed in a time varying magnetic field. So what is the meaning of a time varying magnetic field? The meaning of time varying magnetic field is nothing but my magnetic field is going to be varying with respect to time. That means if you try to represent in graphical notation, if I am assuming flux or flux density B, draw the graph with respect to time, then if I am assuming in the sinusoidal fashion, I can say my flux magnitude is varying with respect to time. At t equal to 0, this is the magnitude. At t equal to some time, this is my magnitude. And after that, it is keep on changing with respect to time. Such kind of magnetic field, we can call it as time varying magnetic field. Now, in order to create a time varying magnetic field, if you see, as we know, flux is equal to mmf divided by reluctance. And we know that the flux is directly proportional to current, right? So in order to create a time varying magnetic field, what kind of current we have to supply? Do I need to supply DC current or AC current? My current should be alternating in nature. Whenever if the current is AC current, then the kind of flux which we are going to get is time varying in nature. Have you understand? So in order to produce time varying flux, we need to supply alternating current. Now the question is, why we are considering only sinusoidal shape of the flux? Why can't we choose a triangular or rectangular shape kind of flux? Because we are always choosing the sinusoidal flux, because if you are taking a triangular or a rectangular shape of the flux, it contains harmonics. Okay, whereas if you are taking a sinusoidal flux, then what will happen is the harmonic content will be very less. So we can able to eliminate the harmonics, presence of harmonics, if I am choosing the sinusoidal shape of the flux. So if the flux is sinusoidal, the kind of EMF induced is also sinusoidal, and which is one of the major requirement in power system analysis. Okay, so we will discuss more about the harmonic analysis in the upcoming classes. So at this point, the simple answer is, in order to create a sinusoidal induced EMF without containing any harmonics, we are going to choose the shape of the magnetic field or flux as sinusoidal. Right, now come back here. So if you take a statically induced EMF, whenever a stationary conductor or a coil placed in a time varying magnetic field, then the EMF gets induced across the conductor. Okay, and the magnitude of that statically induced EMF will be obtained by using Faraday's second law. Faraday's second law of electromagnetic induction. So what is Faraday's second law? The magnitude of statically induced EMF is directly proportional to rate of change of flux linkages. Okay, and if I am assuming my coil is having n number of turns, the magnitude of statically induced EMF will be equal to n d phi by dt, where n is the number of turns of the coil which are connected in series, and d phi by dt is the change in rate of change of flux with respect to time. Okay, so this is my magnitude of statically induced EMF. Now once if you understand the basic definition of statically induced EMF and magnitude, now we will try to understand how to determine the direction of this statically induced EMF. Before that, let me take how this statically EMF will be induced. Now what I am doing is, I am considering a magnetic core of some regular shape. Let us assume this is my magnetic core of some regular shape, and which I am going to wound a coil and this coil, assume that this coil is having some n number of turns. Okay, now I am going to connect this particular winding to a voltage source, alternating voltage source. Because of this alternating voltage, the current which is produced is also alternating in nature, AC current. The moment if this current is started flowing through this particular coil having n number of turns, according to Oersted, whenever if current is flowing through any conductor, then around the conductor magnetic flux lines will be produced. Now here if you observe the direction of the current through this particular winding, okay, here how the current is moving, the current is moving in this direction. So my thumb will be in which direction? Upward direction. So the direction of the flux is in this direction. So this is my direction of flux. As we know, the flux is a curly field, so it will close on its own in this fashion. So this is my direction of flux. Here are we supplying a AC current or DC current? It is AC current. And here the flux is varying, time varying or time invariant? It is time varying because the current is AC. So because of this time varying flux which is linking with these conductors, or coil having n number of turns, obviously EMF gets induced across this particular conductor or coil. So this kind of EMF we can call it as statically induced EMF. Now to determine the direction of the statically induced EMF, we are going to use Lenz's law. So what we are using to determine the direction of the statically induced EMF, we are going to use Lenz's law. Now we will see what is the definition or statement of Lenz's law and how to apply this Lenz's law to determine the direction of statically induced EMF. Now first we will try to see the statement. So the statement of Lenz's law is, according to Lenz's law, always the effect will always oppose the changes in cause. Again I am writing the statement. So according to Lenz's law, the effect will always oppose the changes in the cause for the production of it. Oppose the changes in cause. Changes in cause of same dimension. Okay, changes in the cause of same dimension. Please go through the statement carefully. According to Lenz's law, the effect will always oppose the changes in cause. Okay, and this Lenz's law we are trying to use to determine the polarity of induced EMF. Okay, so what is the polarity of induced EMF? Statically induced EMF will be obtained by using which law? Lenz's law. Now we will try to see how to apply this Lenz's law with a small example. Right. Now let us assume I have a magnet. Okay, I have a magnetic circuit. So this is my magnetic circuit. All of you please go through carefully, listen carefully. I have a bar magnet on which I have wounded a coil having some n number of turns. Okay, and I am going to supply a current through this particular coil having n number of turns. So this is my direction of current. Okay, and assume this is AC current. So obviously the flux is time varying. So can you tell me what is the direction of flux? You have to use right hand thumb rule. If you use right hand thumb rule, so my flux is in the upward direction. So this is my, let us assume this is my flux. So this flux, whatever the flux which is produced, okay, I can call it as main field flux. What I am doing, I am considering as main field flux. Now what I will do is, let us assume this is a coil, some X. Now I will place one more coil in this particular magnetic field. So let us assume I am placing one more coil around this magnetic field, and let us assume this is coil Y. Okay, I am considering this as a coil Y. All of you please relax. Now I will call this as a main field flux. Okay, so can I say is this main field flux is changing with respect to time? Yes, this main field flux is going to change with respect to time. So you are going to find change in main field flux. I can write as we are going to find change in main field flux, right? So because of this change in main field flux which is linking with coil Y, I can say some EMF gets induced across this coil Y. Yes, EMF gets induced across this coil Y. Now if you observe this coil Y, is it a closed coil? Yes, it is a closed coil. So whenever if you observe, if you observe a closed path, because of this EMF, it will drive a current through this coil Y. A current through this coil Y. The moment if current starts flowing through this coil Y, then what will happen? Obviously, Oersted will come into the picture. What Oersted told? So whenever if current is allowed to flow through the conductor or coil, then around the conductor magnetic flux lines will be produced. So because of this current, I can say the flux will be produced, that I can call it as additional flux. Okay, additional flux. So if you observe here, what is the major reason behind the production of this additional flux? Here, what is the cause and what is the effect? What is the cause and what is the effect? Here, my effect is additional flux. If you observe here, my additional flux is producing because of the coil current starts flowing through coil Y, and this current is started flowing through coil Y because of EMF induced across coil Y, and this EMF is induced because of change in flux linkages. Okay, now can I say according to Lenz law my additional flux will oppose the current I which is flowing through coil Y? No. Okay, according to Lenz law, what is the statement I have given? Effect will always oppose the changes in cause of same dimensions. Okay, so here my additional flux cannot able to oppose current, and this current is produced because of EMF induced across coil Y. And can I say my additional flux will oppose this E? No, because of there are two different dimensions. Now this EMF across the coil Y is induced because of change in flux linkages. Okay, change in flux. So I can say my additional flux according to Lenz law will try to oppose change in flux, not simply flux. Okay, you need to remember because of change in flux. Okay, so I can say this is change in flux. Okay, so this is change in flux, and this I can call it as the cause, and this we can call it as effect. So according to Lenz law, always the effect will try to oppose the changes in cause. This is according to which law? Lenz law. So that means if you understand here, I can say my main field flux is moving in this direction or flowing in this direction, right? As the main field flux is flowing in this direction, the additional flux will try to will it move in which direction? I can say my additional flux, what is the direction of the additional flux to satisfy this Lenz law? According to Lenz law, my additional flux will oppose the change in flux linkages. So that means my additional flux will try to move in downward direction. So this is my direction of additional flux. How we have got the direction of this additional flux? The direction of additional flux we are getting from the Lenz law explanation, right? So because it will try to demagnetize. So here if the main field flux is in the upward direction, my additional flux will be in downward direction. To oppose, okay, oppose in the sense it will try to demagnetize. Okay, now as the additional flux is in the downward direction, I got the direction of additional flux. Now if you got the direction of additional flux, can I able to determine the direction of the current? I can use right hand thumb rule. Okay, in the right hand thumb rule, if I know one thing, I can able to determine the other thing. That means if I know the current, I can determine the flux. If I know the direction of flux lines, I can able to determine the direction of current. In this case, I know the direction of flux lines. I can able to determine the direction of what? Current, right? So how to determine the direction of current? Here, my flux lines are moving in which direction? My flux lines are moving in downward direction. So as flux lines are moving in downward direction, the direction of the current, if you try to observe here, what will happen here if you are assuming this is a coil and my flux is moving in the downward direction, right? So as my flux is moving in the downward direction, or else if you have to use right hand thumb rule, it is a coil having number of turns, right? So my thumb is used to represent the direction of current. So here the thumb is in the downward direction. So if you observe here, my four fingers are moving in which direction? Clockwise or anti-clockwise? Clockwise direction. So I can say the direction of the current in this particular coil Y is in this direction. So I got the direction of current. The moment if I know the direction of current, can I able to determine the polarities of this induced EMF in the coil Y? I can able to determine the polarities. Yes or no? I can able to determine the polarities of induced EMF because here my current is moving in this direction. As current is moving in this direction, I can simply determine the direction of EMF. So let me erase this part. Right. So the direction of polarities of induced EMF, let me use a different color. So I can use here. So as the current is moving in this fashion, this is negative polarity and this is positive polarity. So this is my EMF across coil 1. So here if you see the flow, okay, if you try to see here flow, what will happen? Because of change in flux linkages, EMF is produced. Because of EMF is produced in the coil Y, current is started flowing. Because of this coil, current, additional flux is producing. But in order to get the polarities of these three things, we need to do the reverse analysis. First, which polarity we have find? First, we have find the polarity of additional flux according to Lenz law. And this additional, once if you get the additional flux polarity or direction, I can able to determine the direction of current I. Once if I know the direction of current I can able to get the polarities of induced EMF. So, to determine the polarities, we need to do the reverse analysis. But actual operation is going to be in this direction. Have you understand? So, this is how we need to apply Lenz law to determine the polarities of induced EMF. Okay. Now, For suppose if I try to assume that this is my coil X and main field flux is moving in the downward direction, then what will happen? Obviously my additional flux will be in upward direction. So that means if I change the direction of the current, my main field flux will be in the downward direction, so I can able to get the corresponding additional flux direction. So this is how we need to apply Lenz's law. Okay, this is how we have to apply the Lenz's law. Okay, so once if you understand how to apply the Lenz's law, now we will try to see the classification of statically induced EMF. Okay, so if you see quickly, statically induced EMF definition we have seen, and the magnitude of statically induced EMF will be obtained by using Faraday's second law, and direction of statically induced EMF will be obtained by Lenz's law. And to apply the Lenz's law, we have to follow this particular procedure. Okay, we have to follow this particular procedure. So now let us try to move on to the types of statically induced EMFs. So we'll try to see what are the different types of statically induced EMFs. So this statically induced EMF is basically classified into two types. One is self-induced EMF and the second one is mutually induced EMF. Mutually induced EMF. Now we'll try to see what is the meaning of self-induced EMF and what are the describing expressions for self-induced EMF, and similarly we'll see the second one, mutual induced EMF. Okay, so first we will try to start with self-induced EMF. Self-induced EMF. Let us try to understand. So I am going to consider a magnetic core. Okay, so let us try to consider a magnetic core. Yes. Sorry, yeah. So I have a magnetic core of this shape, on which what I am doing is, now I am going to place winding. Let us assume this is a coil having some number of turns n. Okay, now for this particular coil I am giving excitation or supply, AC excitation. This is voltage. Because of this one you are going to get a current which is alternating in nature. Okay, and because of this current which is flowing through a coil having n number of turns, what will happen? Flux will be produced, and we know the direction of the flux. As the current direction is in this direction, my flux will be in this direction. So this is my direction of flux. Okay, direction of flux. Now we will try to see what is the definition of self-induced EMF. So the definition of self-induced EMF is, it is the EMF induced across a coil because of flux linkages which are created by the current flowing through the same coil. Again I am repeating the definition of self-induced EMF. It is the EMF induced across a coil because of flux linkages, and these flux linkages are created because of the current flowing through the same coil or different coil? Same coil. Such kind of EMF we can call it as self-induced EMF. Okay, self-induced EMF. I hope you understand this, right? Now we will try to see how to determine the polarities of the self-induced EMF. So in order to determine the polarities of self-induced EMF, anyway self is a statically induced EMF, right? Now can you tell me how the self-induced EMF is produced? This self-induced EMF is produced because of what? Because of the flux linkages. Okay, so because of change in flux linkages. This change in flux linkages is created because of the current flowing through the winding. Yes or no? Because of change in flux linkages, EMF gets induced across the coil having n turns, and this change in flux is created because of current, and this current is generated because of applied voltage. Now here what is the effect and what is the cause? Here my effect is self-induced EMF. This is final produced quantity. Now can I say according to Lenz's law the self-induced EMF will oppose the change in flux? No, because they are of different dimensions. Now can I say the self-induced EMF again will oppose the current? No, because of this different dimensions. Can I say my self-induced EMF will oppose the applied voltage? Of course. So the major cause for the production of this is applied voltage. So my effect self-induced EMF will try to oppose the applied voltage. Okay, so that means if I am saying my applied voltage vector is in this direction, if this is my applied voltage vector, I can say my self-induced EMF vector will be exactly 180 degrees out of phase with respect to applied voltage because they are opposing with each other. My self-induced EMF will oppose the applied voltage. Okay, will oppose the applied voltage. And already we know that the magnitude of self or mutual induced EMF, because these are statically induced EMF, will be obtained by Faraday's second law. According to Faraday's law, magnitude of self-induced EMF is what? N d phi by dt. N d phi by dt, right? Now, if you see here, so if you want to determine exactly the self-induced EMF, I can write this one as self-induced EMF is equal to magnitude of E self. Okay, sorry, magnitude of the self. Magnitude of the self-induced EMF, you can even write this one as capital E at an angle what? 180 degrees. I am writing exactly the self-induced EMF which incorporates both magnitude and angle. What is this angle 180 degrees? The angle 180 degrees meant that my self-induced EMF, the phase angle difference between self-induced EMF and applied voltage is 180. So with respect to applied voltage, I am calculating the self-induced EMF. Are you following what I am saying? So according to the Faraday's second law, I got the magnitude expression which is equal to N d phi by dt. And from Lenz's law, we got that my self-induced EMF is making an angle of 180 degrees with respect to applied voltage. So that angle I am representing as 180. Here the angle 180 represents the phase angle difference between which two? Applied voltage and self-induced EMF. So we are going to indicate the self-induced EMF with respect to a reference vector as applied voltage. Now if you expand this is in polar form, if you expand this in rectangular form, okay, magnitude of E self into cos 180 plus j sin 180. And we know that the value of cos 180 is minus 1 and j sin 180 is how much? 0. So finally how much you are going to get, guys? So minus of magnitude of self-induced EMF. So minus of, what is the magnitude of self-induced EMF? We got the expression N d phi by dt. So this is the exact formula for self-induced EMF. Okay, so please make a note of this formula. So magnitude of EMF equal to minus N d phi by dt. Here minus represents Lenz's law. That means the polarities of this self-induced EMF, and N d phi by dt represents the magnitude, Faraday's second law. So how many laws are involved in this formula? Two laws. What are those two? One is Lenz's law and second one is Faraday's second law of electromagnetic induction. Right? So this minus represents opposition according to Lenz's law, and we can say that the self-induced EMF is making an angle of 180 degrees with respect to applied voltage. N d phi by dt anyway represents magnitude of this. Okay, I hope you understand how to got the expression for self-induced EMF. Now if I further extend this particular thing and if I got some more relations, let us again consider the magnitude of self-induced EMF, which is equal to, we got the expression as N d phi by dt. Right? Now I will take N inside to this differentiation. So we got d by dt of N into phi. And we know that the formula for flux, what is the formula for flux? MMF divided by reluctance. Flux formula is MMF. What is the formula for MMF, guys? Number of turns into current flowing through that particular winding divided by reluctance. Okay. So this is the formula for reluctance. So from here I can get d by dt of N square into I divided by reluctance. Right. So this I can able to write as okay, so here this even further here also I can write this one as N square by reluctance into di by dt. Okay, so if I further extend this particular thing, so here N d phi by dt, so I will try to modify this particular thing. So this is d by dt of N phi, right? This I am going to write as d by di into N phi into di by dt. Can I write in this fashion? Yes, right. So d by dt of N phi I am writing as d by di into N phi into di by dt. Okay, so this d by di of N phi I can able to write or replace with L di by dt. L di by dt. So the other formula for the magnitude of self-induced EMF will be equal to, the other formula for magnitude of self-induced EMF will be equal to L di by dt. Here L is called coefficient of self-inductance. L is called as coefficient of self-inductance. Coefficient of self-inductance. Now can you tell me what is the formula we got for coefficient of self-inductance? L is equal to how much? D by dt of N phi. So what is the meaning or definition of coefficient of self-inductance? It is the rate of change of flux linkages with respect to change in time. Okay, the rate of change of flux linkages with respect to time is called coefficient of self-inductance. And if you see this formula and this formula, what is the L formula I am going to get? So from here I can able to correlate. See, this is also magnitude of self-induced EMF only, right? So if I compare this equation and this, I can say L equal to how much value you are going to get? L equal to N square by reluctance. Okay, so this is another very important formula you have to remember, because in order to solve some of the previous gate questions you require this one. Okay, so what are the two expressions for EMF, magnitude of self-induced EMF? Either I can use N d phi by dt, okay, based on the information that is given in the problem. For suppose in the problem if they have mentioned the flux information, I can able to use this expression, whereas if they have given the expression corresponding to the current, I can use this one. Okay, so the self-induced EMF is L di by dt, where L is coefficient of self-inductance, which is nothing but the rate of change of flux linkages with respect to time is nothing but my self-inductance. And what is the formula for L? N square by reluctance. Okay, and we know that the flux is MMF divided by reluctance, right? So here what is the formula for flux? Ni by reluctance. From here I can able to write, if I take I to the left hand side, can I get the expression as flux by current equal to N by R? Yes or no? So here in this N square by R, out of N by R I can replace with phi by I. So if I replace in place of N by R with phi by I, what is the equivalent expression for coefficient of self-inductance? So you will get, you will have N into N by R. N by R I can replace with phi by I. So the other formula for coefficient of self-inductance is N phi by I. So whatever the things which I am indicating in the brackets are very important. Please make a separate notes of these points. Okay, these are the formulas which are helpful to solve the questions. So the coefficient of self-inductance L equal to N square by R or N phi by I. So this is about the brief idea about the self-induced EMF. Okay, self-induced EMF. Now we will try to move on to the next concept, mutual induced EMF. Let us consider the next one is mutual induced EMF. Mutual induced EMF. Right. Now we will try to see what is the meaning of mutual induced EMF. For that, again I am going to consider a magnetic core of some regular shape. Let us assume this is my magnetic core on which I am going to place two coils. Let us assume this is coil 1 having N1 number of turns, and I am going to place one more coil here, and let us assume this particular coil is having some N2 number of turns. Okay, assume that I am not going to connect anything across this coil 2. Now this coil 1 is excited by a source. Okay, let us assume this is plus minus applied voltage. Because of this applied voltage, what will happen? The current will start generating, and this current will flow through this coil having N1 number of turns. And we got the direction of this particular current, so I can apply right hand thumb rule so to determine the direction of magnetic flux line. So obviously the flux will be flowing in this direction. Okay, this is my direction of flux. So the moment if this flux is flowing in this way, it is going to linking with coil 2 having N2 turns, and again it is going to link with coil having N1 turns. So I can say my flux is going to linking with both the coils N1 and N2. And here we are giving a AC current or DC current? AC current. So the flux is going to be time varying or time invariant? Obviously it is going to be time varying flux. So as time varying flux is going to be linking with the winding which is stationary, I can say statically induced EMF will be induces. Now out of this, so that means I can say as this flux is linking with the coil N2, you are going to get some EMF E2, let us assume E2, and the same flux is again linking with N1 turns, so you are going to get some EMF E1 across this. Out of these two, I can say E2 is called as mutually induced EMF. So E2 is called mutual induced EMF. Now what is the meaning or definition of mutual induced EMF? So by seeing this one, I can say the definition of mutual induced EMF as, here let us rewrite this one as phi 1. Okay, so here phi 1 is nothing but this is the flux which is produced by allowing current through which coil? Coil 1 or coil 2? Coil 1. So because this flux is produced because of exciting coil 1, so I can say this I am indicating as phi 1. Now let me come back. What is the definition of mutual induced EMF? Now if you see the definition of mutual induced EMF, it is the EMF induced across a coil. It is the EMF induced across a coil because of flux linkages, because of change in flux linkages which are created by which are created by the current flowing through a different coil or same coil, the current flowing through a different coil, which are both are magnetically coupled with each other. Okay, so the definition of mutual induced EMF is, it is a EMF induced across a coil because of change in flux linkages which are created by the current flowing through another coil which is mutually coupled to this one. Okay, I hope you understand the definition of mutual induced EMF. Now let us try to determine the magnitude of this mutual induced EMF. Now here, if you do the analysis, this mutual induced EMF is produced because of what? Change in flux linkages. This change in flux linkages is created because of the current flowing through which coil? Coil 1. So what is the current that is flowing through this coil? I. And this current I is produced because of what? Applied voltage. So according to Lenz's law here, what is the produced quantity or cause and what is the effect? So my effect is this one. And what is the cause for the production of this one? Applied voltage. Right? So because this E2 is produced because of change in flux linkages and which is created because of current, and this current is produced because of applied voltage. So according to Lenz's law, my effect will try to oppose the changes in cause. Okay, it will oppose. That means if I try to write the voltage vector, okay, if the voltage vector is in this direction, applied voltage vector, can you tell me the induced EMF, mutual induced EMF vector direction will be exactly oppose. Oppose means 180 degrees out of phase. Okay, so this is my E2. E2 is nothing but mutual. The angle between these two is how much? 180 degrees. Okay, 180 degrees. Now can you tell me what is the magnitude of this mutual induced EMF? Magnitude of mutual induced EMF will be also obtained by using what? Faraday's second law. According to Faraday's second law, this EMF is induced across a coil of how many number of turns? N2 number of turns into, do I need to write the flux because of this coil 1? So I am going to get d phi 1 by dt. So the formula for magnitude of mutual induced EMF is N2 into d phi 1 by dt. So this is one important formula. Right? Now if I want to indicate even the polarities of this E2, what I will do, I will use the Lenz's law. So according to Lenz's law, the value of induced EMF E2 will be equal to magnitude of mutual induced EMF at an angle 180. This angle 180 represents what? The angle 180 represents the phase angle difference between induced EMF E2 and applied voltage. Okay, so now if I expand this polarity form, as we know angle 180 I can write as cos 180 plus j sin 180. And we know that the cos 180 value is -1 and j sin 180 value is 0. Right? So we are going to get, what is the value you are going to get, guys? So here I can write this one as minus magnitude of E2. So what is minus magnitude of E2? Magnitude of E2 already we know, N2 into d phi 1 by dt. So this is the formula for mutual induced EMF. So here again minus represents the opposition of this induced EMF with respect to applied voltage. That is nothing but Lenz's law, and N2 into d phi 1 by dt is nothing but my Faraday's second law of electromagnetic induction. Now further we will try to see about the magnitude of this mutual induced EMF. Just now we have written the magnitude of this mutual induced EMF as N2 into d phi 1 by dt. This is one formula. Okay. Now what I will do is I will take N2 to inside. So we are going to get d by dt of N2 into phi 1. Okay. N2 into phi 1. This I can able to write as d N2 into phi 1 divided by di into di by dt, where I is nothing but exciting current, okay, or this current, whatever this current I am indicating, this I am representing over here. Okay, so this is nothing but d N2 phi 1 divided by di into di by dt. So this I can write as m di by dt. M di by dt. Either you can use small letter also. Okay, generally we are using small letters for alternating quantities. Okay, so magnitude of E2 will be equal to m di by dt. So if I know the flux information, I can use this formula. If I know the current information, I can use this one. By the way, what is the meaning of m here? The meaning of m here is called as coefficient of mutual inductance. Okay, so here what is m here? M is nothing but coefficient of mutual inductance. Coefficient of mutual inductance. Right. Now, how to calculate the value of m? So, what is the formula for m? By comparing this expression and this one, I can say the value of m will be equal to d N2 phi 1 divided by di. So what is the meaning of dN2phi1 divided by di? So let me move this slide somewhat upwards. So I hope it is visible, right? Let me come back here. So what is the meaning of this dN2phi1 by di? The meaning of dN2phi1 by di is nothing but it is the change in flux linkages in coil. Which coil? It is the rate of change in flux linkages in which coil? In second coil, because of change in current in which coil? First coil. Again I am writing this statement. So rate of change in flux linkages, in coil 2 because of or due to, we can write anything, because of change in current of which coil? Current of coil 1. Okay, this is called as coefficient of mutual inductance. So the formula for coefficient of mutual inductance is d by dt of N2 into phi1. So from here I can try to get some standard formulas for M. So M is equal to d by di of N2 into phi. What is the formula for this? Is phi1, right? So we know that the formula for flux is mmf divided by reluctance. So if I try to write this one, d by di of N2 into, what is the formula for phi1, guys? mmf divided by reluctance. What is the formula for mmf? N into I, number of turns into current. Do I need to consider number of turns of coil 1 or coil 2? I need to consider number of turns of coil 1, because this phi1 is created because of current flowing through which coil? Coil 1. So I am going to get N1 into I1, this one. Okay, and again this current, sorry, this is I only, right? So we are going to use, yes, this is I. Okay, so this is my M value. So now if I do the further simplification, I am going to get M as N1 into N2, and this is mmf. Flux is mmf divided by reluctance. So you are going to get N1 into N2 divided by R di by di. So you are going to get M value as N1 N2 divided by reluctance. So this is the formula for coefficient of mutual inductance. So the coefficient of mutual inductance, what is M here, guys? M is nothing but coefficient of mutual inductance, right? So here what is the formula for M? We got N1 into N2 divided by reluctance. Now again further I can able to rewrite this expression in terms of flux also, okay, because we know that the formula for flux phi1 equal to N1 into I divided by reluctance, and from here N1 by R I can write as phi1 into phi1 by I. So the formula for M becomes what you are going to get. In place of N1 by R I am going to replace phi1 by I. So you are going to get N2 into phi1 divided by I. Here I is nothing but current flowing through which coil? I am considering during this explanation the current flowing through coil 1. Current flowing through coil 1. So this is about the brief idea about mutual induced EMF. For suppose if I want to write the expression for self-induced EMF, E1. Self-induced EMF magnitude. Here E1 is called self-induced EMF. What is the formula you are going to get? N1 into d phi1 divided by dt. This is the formula. And if you want to represent even the direction, we are going to get minus N1 into d phi1 by dt. And we know that this minus represents opposition according to Lenz's law. So according to Lenz's law, these polarities of EMFs are in such a way that the angle between applied voltage and this E1 is also again 180 degrees. That means I can say my E1 is in phase with E2. Okay. So if you observe this diagram, I can say both E1 and E2 are exactly 180 degrees out of phase with respect to applied voltage, whereas E1 and E2 are in phase with each other. So the induced EMFs, both self and mutual induced EMFs are always in phase with each other, which are combinedly both are exactly 180 degrees out of phase with respect to applied voltage. So the set of formulas what you have to remember here is, if you know the flux information, magnitude of mutual induced EMF is N2 d phi by phi1 by dt. Or if you know the current information, the formula becomes mdi by dt, and the formula for M is N1 N2 by R, or we can write as N2 into phi1 divided by I. So this is about the brief idea about the different kind of EMFs according to Faraday's law. So far what we have discussed is, we have seen Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction, where we have seen the dynamical induced EMF, and how to determine the dynamical induced EMF with the help of two configurations. And after that we have seen statical induced EMF, and in that statical induced EMF we have seen types of statically induced EMFs, right? Right. Now we will try to see one more important concept which is helpful to understand the next mission called transformers. that is force acting on two conductors, or simply I can say two parallel conductors. Force acting on two parallel conductors. So this is another important concept you have to understand in order to get some complete information regarding transformers. Okay, right. Now if you try to see the force acting on two parallel conductors, what is the meaning of this statement? That means if I am taking two conductors which are placed in parallel to each other, and if I allow the current flowing through these two conductors, then some force will be acting. So that means if two parallel conductors are allowed to flow or carry current, then there is a force of either attraction or repulsion between these two conductors. And the basic principle behind this force production is Lorentz principle, Lorentz force equation. So again I am repeating the statement. Whenever if two conductors are placed in parallel to each other, and if you allow a current through these two parallel conductors, then they will experience a force on it. Okay, as you know Lorentz force equation, what is the statement of Lorentz force equation? Whenever a current carrying conductor placed in magnetic field, then it will experience a force. Okay, the same Lorentz force equation principle will also applicable for two parallel conductors case. Okay, for two parallel conductors case. So whenever if two conductors, for suppose if I am saying this is one conductor having some length L and this is another conductor which are placed parallel to each other, and if I allow some current through these conductors, then there will be either force of attraction or repulsion between those two conductors. Now our task is, we need to understand how to determine the force acting on the conductors and what kind of force will be presented if the two parallel conductors are carrying current in same direction, and what kind of force will be presented if two parallel conductors are carrying current in opposite direction, and as well as we need to determine the magnitude of the forces acting on those conductors. Okay, so this is the basic motive of studying this particular concept. Before that, in order to determine the direction of force acting on the conductors, we have to use Fleming left hand rule. Okay, so first statement is, whenever as we know Lorentz force equation, what is the statement of Lorentz force equation? According to Lorentz force equation, whenever a current carrying conductor, for suppose if I am saying this is current carried by the conductors 1 and 2, okay, because of this current flowing through these conductors, obviously some flux will be created. This flux will be linking by this current carrying conductor I2, so obviously some force will be acting on this conductor. Okay, so what is the statement of Lorentz force equation? Whenever a current carrying conductor placed in magnetic field, then it will experience a force on it. To determine the direction of force acting on the conductors, what we are going to use? The direction of force acting on the conductor will be obtained by using Fleming left hand rule. Fleming left hand rule. So according to this Fleming left hand rule, what we have to do? So we need to stretch first three fingers of our left hand perpendicular to one another in this fashion. Okay, we need to stretch first three fingers of our left hand perpendicular to one another, and out of these, for suppose if you are taking thumb, okay, so let me take center finger. The center finger of our left hand is used to determine the direction of current, whereas the forefinger of our left hand is used to determine the direction of magnetic flux lines, whereas finally the thumb of our left hand is used to determine the direction of force acting on the conductor. Okay, direction of force acting on the conductor. Let me try to see how to apply this Fleming left hand rule for a small case. Let us consider, I have a magnetic poles. Let us assume this is my north pole and this is my south pole. And as we know, my flux will flow from north to south outside the magnet. Now what I am going to do is, I am going to place a conductor here. Okay, and I will try to allow some current through this conductor, and here I am showing the current flowing through the conductor is into the plane. So according to Lorentz force equation, if you observe here, a current carrying conductor placed in magnetic field will experience this force. To determine the direction of force acting on this conductor, what we have to do? We need to use Fleming left hand rule. So let me try to apply the Fleming left hand rule. Stretch first three fingers of left hand perpendicular to one another. If you see, my forefinger is used to represent the direction of flux lines, and after that my center finger is used to represent the direction of current. Here my current is into the plane or out of the plane? Into the plane. So into the plane, turn your hand, and my thumb finally represent the direction of force acting on the conductor. So at this particular position, I can say my force acting on the conductor is in downward direction. And this force is also called as electromagnetic force, because this force is created because of the current flowing through the conductor, which is placed in what? Magnetic field. That is the reason we can name it as electromagnetic field. So the name, how the name is coming as electromagnetic field, because this is the force which is created because of the conductor carrying electrical current which is placed in magnetic field. Let me take one more case. For suppose if I am taking a magnetic field of in this fashion, let us assume this is north and this is south pole, and I have created let us assume this is the direction of flux lines. Now I am placing a conductor and I am trying to allow the current flowing through the conductor in this fashion. So here dot represents out of the plane. Now obviously here my conductor is carrying current which is placed in magnetic field, it will experience force. To determine the direction of force acting on the conductor, again you have to use Fleming left hand rule. So forefinger, direction of flux lines, center finger, direction of current, into the plane or out of the plane? Out of the plane. So my thumb will be in which direction? Upward direction. So the electromagnetic force acting on this particular conductor is in upward direction. So this is about how to determine the force acting on the conductor. And to determine the magnitude of force acting on the conductor, we are going to use Lorentz force equation. According to Lorentz force equation, the magnitude of force acting on the conductor is BIL sin theta. Here theta is nothing but the angle between the moment, the current carried by the conductor, or the direction of the current through the conductor, and magnetic flux lines or flux density B. For suppose if I am saying the angle between this direction of the current and flux lines theta is 90 degrees, then I can say maximum force will be experienced by the conductor. And what is the expression for the maximum force? BIL. Right? So now the point is, we will try to apply the same concept to a case of two parallel conductors. So now if you try to apply the same thing for two parallel conductors, let us try to see what kind of forces will be presented, whether they are going to a force of attraction or force of repulsion. That depends upon whether we are going to allow the current in same direction through these two parallel conductors, or whether we are going to allow the currents in opposite direction through these two parallel conductors. So now let us consider the first case. I am considering two parallel conductors. Right. So let me take two parallel conductors over here. So this is one conductor having some length L, and this is one more conductor having some length L. Let me try to keep some distance. Right. So this is another conductor having some length L. Right. Good. So now if you are trying to see, so now what I am doing is I am trying to allow the current through these conductors. Let us assume assume as a conductor 1 and this is conductor 2. In the conductor 1 I am allowing the current in the upward direction and the magnitude of the current is I1, and even in conductor 2 also I am trying to allow the current I2 in the same direction. Right? Now we need to understand what is the force acting between these two conductors. Right? In order to understand, as we know, so here the moment if the current is flowing, aerostat will come into the picture. Whenever if current is flow through the conductor, around the conductor magnetic flux lines will be produced. Now if you see, my thumb is in the upward direction, my four fingers, if you open the four fingers, my four fingers are moving around this conductor in anti-clockwise. So around this particular conductor, the direction of flux lines will be in which direction? Anti-clockwise direction. So this is my direction of flux lines. So here, instead of representing this one to make the diagram clumsy, what I am doing is I am going to represent, so in a simple manner, you can able to understand that. So instead of representing in a circular fashion, what I am doing is here, my thumb is in the upward direction. So my four fingers are here entering into the plane towards the right hand side of the conductor 1, entering into the plane, whereas to the left hand side of the conductor 1, my four fingers are moving out of the plane. So here you are going to get cross flux phi1, whereas here you are going to get dot flux. Similarly, if you try to apply the same right hand thumb rule to determine the direction of flux lines, here also in conductor 2 my current is flowing in upward direction. So to the right hand side of the conductor 2 my four fingers are entering into the plane. So here you will get cross flux, whereas here you will get dot flux. So this is flux phi. Right. So now if you try to observe, this is called middle region or central region. okay, middle region or central region, whatever it may be, and these are okay, outside regions. Okay, I can say, if you observe here, can I say this flux in the middle region, okay, this flux phi 1 because of current flowing through the conductor 1 is into the plane, whereas here out of the plane. That means if I am saying this is anti-clockwise flux, this becomes clockwise flux. Okay, so that means these two fluxes are both are in same direction or opposite direction? Opposite direction. That means, do I need to get a magnetization or demagnetization? That means these two fluxes are aided with each other or oppose in the sense demagnetization. So we can say that, okay, we can say that compared to middle region, the outside regions will have strong magnetic field or a weak magnetic field. Obviously, compared to the middle region, my outside flux region is stronger. Okay, so I can say this particular region is having stronger magnetic flux. Okay, whereas this is weaker magnetic flux region, whereas this is a stronger magnetic flux. Stronger magnetic flux. So I can say that compared to middle region, the outside regions will have stronger magnetic flux. Are you following? Why? Because these two fluxes are demagnetizing with each other. Have you understand in this point? Yes, relax. Now, the moment if I know the stronger flux region, in order to determine the force acting on the conductors, always we have to choose the reference as stronger flux region. Okay, to determine the force acting on the conductors, again I am saying this is very important point. To determine the force acting on the conductors, always choose the reference as a stronger flux region. Okay, because in the Fleming left hand rule, so in the Fleming left hand rule, our forefinger is used to represent the direction of flux lines. Okay, here but in the middle region I have okay, one is cross dot, and outside region I have dot and cross. Right, so which flux region we have to consider to apply this Fleming left hand rule? Always make a key point that always we have to choose the reference as stronger flux region. Right, now we'll try to see, we will try to apply Lorentz force equation. Here I can say my current carrying conductor placed in a magnetic field, so it will experience some force. To determine the direction of force, I have to choose which region, stronger flux region. Right, now you can open your left hand and determine the direction of force acting on this conductor 1. And you need to choose the reference as a stronger flux region. Okay, so let me take whatever it may be. So if you are taking this particular this conductor, or you can choose this conductor, let me apply for this one. You can apply, open your Fleming left hand rule, and you can use these three fingers perpendicular to one another. First I am trying to apply center finger. Center finger stronger region is this one, is into the plane or out of the plane. So it is okay, so if you see, this is into the plane or out of the plane, it is into the plane. Okay, so you need to use this center finger for flux or direction of current, sorry. So this is my direction of current. Okay, my direction of current, my center finger is into the plane or out of the plane? Into the plane. Okay, and after that here my forefinger is used to, sorry, my center finger is, the current direction is in upward direction. Direction of flux is into the plane or out of the plane? Into the plane. So my forefinger is into the plane. So my thumb is showing towards which direction? Towards left hand side. So we can say that the force acting on this conductor 2 is in which direction, guys? In this direction. Are you following what I am conveying? Right, so if you again quickly apply, so center finger current direction, forefinger flux direction, thumb represents force. Right, now here first you can open this in this fashion, and after that move this forefinger. So center finger is upward direction because current direction is an upward, and my forefinger is into the plane because flux is into the plane in the stronger field, and my thumb represents towards left hand side. So the force acting is in this direction. Now if you try to similarly apply for this one, okay, here first you need to apply center finger, direction of current is in this fashion, and the stronger flux region is outside or inside. Okay, so if you try to move, so here if you try to see here, okay, so if you try to see here my center finger is into the plane and this is out of the plane, so my force will be in this direction. The force acting on this particular conductor 1 will be in this direction. So the point you need to understand here is, whenever if two parallel conductors are carrying current in same direction, then there is a force of attraction or force of repulsion between those two conductors. I hope you understand this statement. Now I will give a small task to you. You can please pause the video and tell me. Okay, I am going to consider the next case where I am taking, this is conductor 1 and this is conductor 2, and let me allow, if this is conductor 1, this is conductor 2, I am trying to allow the current flowing through the conductor 1 in upward, and in conductor 2 I am allowing the current in downward direction. Now please pause the video and try to do the analysis and tell me whether you are going to get force of attraction or force of repulsion between these two conductors. Let us try to see here. Here my current is flowing in the upward direction. The moment if the current is flowing in the upward direction, air state will come into the picture. So here my thumb is in upward direction, my four fingers here entering into the plane. So flux phi1 is into the plane and obviously here out of the plane. And after that again here if you observe here my current is in the downward direction, my thumb showing downward. So here in this region my four fingers are into the plane. So the flux phi2 will be here into the plane and here out of the plane. Right. So if you observe here, I can say now the middle region is a stronger flux region or weaker flux region. Both the fluxes are in the same direction. Okay. So both the fluxes are in the same direction means they get magnetized with each other or demagnetized. They get magnetized with each other. So I can say compared to outside regions, my middle region is a stronger flux region. So this I can choose as a reference while applying Fleming left hand rule. So this is weaker flux region and this is also weaker flux region compared to the middle region. Right, this is a stronger flux region. Now you can apply Fleming left hand rule. So let me apply to this conductor 2 so that you can able to get for the conductor 1 also. Right. So here first you can use center finger in the direction of current. Okay, current is in this direction, and after that is it into the plane or out of the plane? Into the plane. Forefinger represents into the plane. So here my thumb is in downward direction, forefinger is into the plane. My this is my center finger, right? Center finger is in the downward direction, my forefinger is into the plane. So my thumb is showing towards left hand side or right hand side? Right hand side. So this is the direction of force acting on conductor 2. Similarly, you can try to apply for this conductor 1. If you try to apply the similar analysis for conductor 1, you will observe that the force acting on this conductor was is in this direction. So if you observe here, the conclusion what we are getting is whenever if two conductors are connected in parallel or if two parallel conductors are allowed to carry current in opposite direction, then there is a force of repulsion between these two conductors. So what are the two conclusions we got? If two parallel conductors are allowed to carry current in same direction, then there is a force of attraction. If they are allowed to carry current in opposite direction, then there is a force of repulsion between those two conductors. Now, how to determine the magnitude of the forces acting on these conductors? To determine the magnitude of force acting on the conductors, we have to use this particular Lorentz force equation. According to this Lorentz force equation, the maximum force acting on the conductor will be equal to BIL. Am I correct? Now, how to get the value of B? To determine the value of B, okay, so you know that according to Ampere circuit law, B equal to mu H. Now, once if I can able to calculate the magnetic field intensity or strength of the magnetic field, I can able to get flux density. If I get flux density, I can able to get the force acting on the conductor. So the next task for us is how to determine the intensity of the magnetic field or magnetic field intensity. How to determine magnetic field intensity? In order to understand how to determine the magnetic field intensity, I will take a small case. For suppose if I am taking a conductor having some length L and I am allowing some current through this conductor in this direction. Because of this current, what will happen? Around this conductor, magnetic flux lines. Okay, so if you apply right hand thumb rule here into the plane, out of the plane, or I can draw anti-clockwise flux lines around this conductor. Okay, this is my anti-clockwise flux lines. Yes or no? Now, what I will do is I am considering some point P, which is d meters away from this particular conductor. Okay, I am considering a point P which is d meters away from this particular conductor. Okay, and here d is nothing but the perpendicular distance or right angle distance between the conductor and point P. Now our interest is to determine the magnetic field intensity at this point P. We need to determine the magnetic field intensity at point P, which is d meters away from this particular conductor. Okay, so there is one standard formula is there. I am not going to discuss that formula proof for that one. In electromagnetic field theory, we have discussed about this magnetic field intensity. So the magnetic field intensity at a point P, which is d meters away from this particular conductor, perpendicular distance, then H is equal to I by 2 pi d you are going to get. Okay, so I is nothing but the current flowing through this conductor, 2 pi d is nothing but distance between the point and current. Now I am trying to apply this particular formula to determine the forces acting on the conductors. Okay, so I will take out of these two cases, I will consider this particular case and we will try to see how to determine the force acting on these particular conductors. So again, I am quickly taking this case 1. So this is my conductor 1, this is conductor 2. right? This is conductor 1 and this is conductor 2, and I am trying to allow the currents flowing through these conductors I1 and I2 in this direction. Okay, so because of these conductors allowing current I1 and I2 in this direction, so obviously there is, because these two conductors are carrying current in same direction, then there is a force of attraction between these two conductors, right? So let us assume this is F2 and this is F1. Now first case 1, I am trying to calculate, okay, the force acting on conductor 2, force acting on conductor 2 due to flux created by conductor 1, due to flux created by conductor 1, okay, due to flux created by conductor 1. So again I am repeating, you need to determine the force acting on conductor 2. How much force acting on conductor 2 due to flux created by which conductor? 1. Okay, so that means here the moment if I allow the current around this particular conductor, magnetic flux lines will be produced, right? Around this particular conductor, magnetic flux, and if you apply right hand thumb rule, this is my direction of magnetic flux lines. Yes or no? Now already we know that how to calculate the force acting. So the force acting on the conductor 2, F2 equal to BIL, maximum force. Let us consider maximum force, BIL. What is B? Do I need to consider B1 or B2? Okay, what is the definition of Lorentz force equation? Whenever a current carrying conductor placed in magnetic field. Here current carrying conductor means my conductor 2 is carrying current I2, which is placed in magnetic field, and according to the statement, that field is created by whom? This field is created by conductor 1. So B is nothing but flux density, and that flux density is created by conductor 1. So I have to write B1, okay, BIL, okay, so BIL. So this is flux density B, and the current flowing through the conductor 2 is I2 into length of the conductor is, let us consider L2, okay, length of the conductor is L2, or you can consider L also, same length, that is up to you. So B1 into I2 into L2. Now how to calculate B1? B1 equal to mu H, okay, so let us consider B equal to mu into H1 into I2 into L2. Now can you tell me what is the value of H1? We can apply the same concept to what I have discussed, okay. Here we need to calculate H at a point P, which is d meters away from conductor 1. So that means you need to imagine there is a conductor 2 over here at a point P, which is having a distance of d, okay, from conductor 1. So imagine this is conductor 1 and this is conductor 2. So H is equal to I divided by 2 pi d. I is nothing but this current divided by 2 pi d. D is the distance, right? So if you try to calculate, right, so F2 equal to B1 I2 into L2. Right, so here mu into H1. So now can you tell me what is the value of H1? H1 is equal to, okay, so let us assume the distance between these two conductors is d. Then in that case, can you tell me what is the value of H1? H1 is nothing but, or we can say the force which is, H1 is equal to, what you are going to get? I1, small I1 divided by 2 pi d into I2 into L2. This is my what? Force acting on conductor 2 due to flux created by what? Conductor 1. So force acting on conductor 2 due to flux created by conductor 1. Now similarly I can try to determine the force acting on conductor 1 because of flux created by conductor 2. That is nothing but F1. So in order to write F1, what you have to write? Okay, so the flux is created by conductor 2. So you have to write V2, and current flowing through the conductor 1 is I1, and length of the conductor is L1. So you are going to get mu into H2 into I1 into L1. H2 is nothing but I2 divided by 2 pi d. Are you following what I am saying? Right. Now we'll try to see that one also. Now I am trying to consider, consider the case 2, where we are going to see the force acting on conductor 1, or force experienced, whatever it may be, force experienced by conductor 1 due to flux created by whom? Flux created by conductor 2. Right. Now if you try to see this one, so I need to write or create force acting on conductor 1, that is F1, okay, which is equal to BIL. B is nothing but flux. That flux is created by whom? Conductor 2. That means I need to write B2 into current is I1 into length of the conductor is L1. So from here B2 is equal to mu into H2 into I1 into L1. What is H2? H2 is nothing but I can write as I by 2 pi d. Which I you need to consider? Current through conductor 2. So I will get I2 divided by 2 pi d into I1 into L1. Okay. So I can say from these formulas, this is one formula what we got, force acting on conductor, force experienced by conductor 2 because of flux created by conductor 1, and F1 is nothing but force experienced by conductor 1 due to flux created by conductor 2. These are the formulas. So from these formulas we can get some observations. Okay. Now if you observe here from these two formulas, my force acting on the conductors, whether are experienced by the conductors, whether they may be a repulsive force or attractive force. Here I am considering attractive forces. Okay. So the force experienced by the conductors, can I say inversely proportional to d? What is d here? Distance between these two conductors. Okay. Now for suppose if the distance between the two conductors decreases, then the force experienced, that means force of attraction between these two conductors gets increases. So the force of attraction between the two conductors gets increases if the distance between those two conductors gets decreases. Even one more point, if you observe here, I can say the force acting on the conductor is directly proportional to mu. What is mu? Permeability, right? That means if I want to increase the force experienced by the two conductors, they may be a repulsive force or attractive force, I need to increase the permeability. So that means I have to choose the magnetic material with high permeability so that I can able to increase the force acting on or experienced by the two conductors. Okay. Similarly, my force is also directly proportional to the magnitude of the currents I1 and I2. Okay, if the current flowing through these two conductors also increases, then the amount of force experienced by the two conductors also gets increases. These are the three important observations you have to understand from these formulas. So the force experienced by the two conductors, whether they may be attractive or repulsive force, is inversely proportional to distance. If distance between two parallel conductors decreases, then the force of attraction or repulsion gets increases. If you choose a better magnetic material with high permeability, then also force of attraction or repulsion between the two conductors increases. If the magnitude of the currents also gets increases, then the force of attraction or repulsion between the two conductors gets increases. So if you summarize the discussion what we have made, first one, we have started with Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction. We have seen the different types of Faraday's law: dynamical induced EMF, statical induced EMF, self-induced EMF, mutual induced EMF. Followed by, we have seen the force acting on the conductors. Now we will try to discuss about the some of the problems based on the discussion that what we have made. Right. So let us read the first question. So two long parallel conductors are laid at a center to center distance of 4 meters in air. Each conductor is carrying 800 amperes in opposite direction. The length of each conductor is 100 meters. Determine the force experienced by the each conductor. So already we have seen the force experienced by the conductors. So whenever if two conductors are connected in parallel or placed parallel to each other, and if they allow to carry current in opposite direction, then there is a force of repulsion. So now we need to understand how much force is going to be acting, and even we have derived the formulas for the force acting on each conductor by the flux linking with the other coil current. Right. So now let us try to see here. So as from the discussion, so we have here two parallel conductors which are allowed to carry a current. So if you see center to center distance, they kept at a center to center distance of 4 meters. Okay, in air. Each conductor is carrying 800 amperes in opposite direction. So that means this is carrying 800 amperes, whereas this is carrying 800 amperes in the opposite direction. The moment if these two conductors are carrying current in opposite direction, then there is a force of repulsion acting between these two conductors. So let us, those forces are indicated with F1 and F2. And each conductor is carrying 800 in opposite. The length of the each conductor, they mention that 100 meters. Okay, that means if you try to indicate the length of each conductor, so that means this length from here to here, the length of this conductor they have mentioned as 100 meters. Now we need to determine the force experienced by each conductor. To determine the force experienced by each conductor, let me try to solve this question. Okay, so now here already we have seen the formula here. So both the conductors are carrying current of 800 amperes, same current, and they are having same length. So obviously we know that the force experienced or force experienced by the conductor F equal to, we know that mu into I1 I2 divided by, they mentioned that it is, they are placed in the air, so relative permeability is 1, so you are going to get only mu naught. mu naught into mu r, where relative permeability for the air medium is 1, I1 into I2 divided by 2 pi d, where d is the perpendicular distance between these two conductors, into L, length of the conductor. So here the only parameters which is varying is this length. Okay, so but here the length of each conductor is same. That means the amount of force acting on these two conductors is same, because here both the conductors are carrying current, same current. I1 is equal to I2, L1 is equal to L2. So obviously same amount of forces. That means I can say F1 is equal to F2, which is equal to F. Okay. Now if you calculate only the force acting on either this conductor or this conductor, both are same. Right. So what is the value of mu naught? Mu naught will be equal to 4 pi into 10 power minus 7. And the current carried by both the conductors I1 and I2 are respectively 800 and 800 divided by 2 pi into the distance between these two conductors is equal to 4 meters into length of the each conductor is 100 meters, they have mentioned, right? So if you do the simplification, finally after doing the simplification I am directly writing, so you are going to get 3.2 newtons is the answer for this particular question. I hope you understand. So likewise you can try to solve some of the questions by framing on your own. Okay, so you can try to frame the question on your own so that you can able to get some idea about how to determine the forces acting on the conductors. Right. So let us try to move on to the next question. So first try to read the question. Two coils of 500 and 300 tons respectively are wounded on same magnetic circuit and are carrying same current of 8 amperes. The flux produced by the first coil is 0.4 milliwebers and the second coil is 0.24 milliwebers. Determine self-inductance of both the coils. Right? So that means L1 and L2 respectively. So according to the question, for suppose if I am taking this is my magnetic core on which I have placed two coils. Okay, so let us assume I have placed one coil here. Okay, so the first coil is having some, let us consider 500 tons and it is allowed to carry how much amount of current? 8 amperes current. Now I am going to place one more coil and let us assume that this particular coil is having 300 tons and here also in this particular coil I am trying to allow the same amount of current of 8 amperes. Okay, so now if you see the direction of the current through this particular coil is in this direction. So obviously by using right hand thumb rule, so if you see, okay, so current is entering below the core and above the core. So my four fingers are in downward direction. So the direction of flux because of this coil 1 is in this direction. Whereas if you see the direction of the current in the second coil is in this direction, right? If you clearly see how I have wounded the winding, we can understand. So now again if you apply right hand thumb rule, so my direction of currents on this core is in this direction. So flux direction because of this coil 2 will be in this fashion. Okay, forget about how much flux is linking with both the coils. Okay, so if at all if they are asking about mutual inductance or coefficient of coupling, in that case we need to think about how much amount of flux of this first coil is linking with second coil and so on. Okay, so those anyway you have studied in network theory, magnetically coupled circuits. Let me come back to the question. Here what is our interest? We need to determine the self inductance of both the coils, right? So let us try to see how to determine the self inductance. So what is the formula for self-inductance of the coil? Already we have derived. Okay, so if I want to determine the self-inductance of the coil 1, so let us assume this is coil 1 and this is coil 2, right? So what is the basic formula for self-inductance of the coil 1? N1 square divided by reluctance, right? But in order to calculate the reluctance, I need to know the dimensions of this magnetic core material, right? Because my reluctance depends upon the dimensions. That means it depends upon the length of the flux path or length of the core, as well as area of cross section of the core, and you need to understand what kind of magnetic material they have used. That means we need to understand what is the relative permeability of that magnetic material which they have used to design this core. Am I correct? Right? But I don't know any information regarding the core dimensions. So that is the reason I cannot able to calculate the reluctance with the given data. So I already given one more formula, equivalent formula, which is used to determine the self-inductance of the coil. So which is equal to N1 into the corresponding flux phi1 divided by I1. Okay, so here N1 is number of turns of the coil 1, flux is the amount of flux produced by coil 1 because of the exciting current I1. So this I can say I1 and this is phi1. Similarly this is I2 and this is my phi2. They have given each and every information in this formula, right? So I can directly apply. So N1, number of turns of this coil 1 is 500 and the flux produced by this coil 1, already we have seen, first coil is 0.4 milliwebers. So you are going to get 0.4 into 10 power minus 3. Okay. divided by the exciting current through this particular coil 1 is how much? 8 amperes, right? So you are having 8 amperes. So if you do the simplification, the self-inductance of coil 1, after doing the simplification, you are going to get 0.025 henries you will get. Okay, so if I made any mathematical simplifications or mistake in the simplifications, you can please correct it. Okay, but the procedure will be correct. Right. Now if you want to determine the self-inductance of second coil, again I can use a similar formula. Instead of N1, I need to write N2, phi 2, I2. Right. So what is N2 here? The value of N2 is the number of turns of the coil 2, which is 300, and the amount of flux generated by this coil 2 is how much? 0.24 milliwebers. Right, so you are going to get 0.24 milli into 10 power minus 3 divided by the current carried by this coil 2 is how much? 8 amperes, same, right? Now if you do the simplification, you can able to get the self-inductance of this coil 2. After doing the simplification, you are going to get 9 millihenries. You are going to get 9 millihenries. So this is how we need to solve the question related to the coefficient of self-inductance. I hope you understand this. So my sincere request to you is try to remember the formulas whichever I have kept in the brackets. That means we have derived the formula for self-induced EMF and we have derived the formula for coefficient of self-inductance, and we have derived the formula for mutual induced EMF and the corresponding coefficient of mutual inductance. So please try to remember those formulas, because in the previous gate questions directly they are framing some questions. Okay, right. So let us try to move on to the next question. Yeah, first try to read the question. So a solenoid has 1000 tons and carries a current of 4 amperes. The mean length of the core is 0.5 meters and cross section area of the core is 100 centimeters square. The relative permeability is 1400. The self-induced EMF across a coil, we need to determine self-induced EMF across a coil if excitation current is switched off at 0.1 seconds linearly. So switched off in 0.1 seconds, okay, not at 0.1 seconds. If excitation current is switches off in 0.1 seconds linearly, then you need to determine the self-induced EMF. So here they are asking majorly about the magnitude of self-induced EMF. So if already we know that the magnitude of self-induced EMF is, basic formula is you are from the Faraday's law of Faraday's second law of electromagnetic induction, you are having N d phi by dt. But do you know the information of rate of change of flux with respect to the time? No, right? So they have not given any information regarding changes in flux linkages. But equivalent formula what we have derived is L di by dt. Am I correct? L di by dt. Now, once if I can able to determine the coefficient of self-inductance, and if I know the information of di by dt, then I can able to solve self-induced EMF. Now, first we will try to see, is there any possibility of determining coefficient of self-inductance? As we know, the formula for coefficient of self-inductance is N square by R, or if this is coil, okay, so a solenoid has only one coil, so let us directly give N square by R. If I know the flux information and current, I need to write N phi by I, what we have solved in the previous question. But in this formula, I know the number of turns, right? So how many number of turns they have mentioned? N value 1000, right? But can I able to calculate the reluctance from the given data? Let us try to see. What is the formula for reluctance, guys? Length of the flux path or length of the core divided by mu naught mu r into area of cross section of the core. So I hope here they have given the length of the core, right? So what is the length of the core? They have given 0.5 meters. This is length of the core. And even they have mentioned the cross section area of the core 100 centimeters square. And they have given relative permeability anyway. So I can comfortably calculate the reluctance. So what is the reluctance? Length of the flux path is 0.5 meters, 0.5 divided by mu naught, 4 pi into 10 power minus 7 into relative permeability. What is the relative permeability they have given for the core material? 1400 into area of cross section 100 centimeters square. So you are going to get 100 into 10 power minus 4. So if you do the simplification for this one, I am directly writing the answer. Let me try to move upwards slightly so that we can comfortably solve the question. Right. Yeah, fine. So if I do the simplification, I am going to get the reluctance value as, after doing the simplification, you are going to get 28420. Okay. So this is the value of reluctance what you are going to get, and the units you know, ampere turns per Weber. Now, once if I know the reluctance, I can able to calculate the coefficient of self-inductance, N square divided by reluctance. Already they have given the value of N, right? So if you quickly see, what is the value of number of turns they have given? 1000. So if I try to substitute that N value over here, then I will get L. So 1000 square divided by the reluctance is 28420. I have rounded it off to 28420. Okay, if you are getting exact value, you can mention that. Okay, so after that, if you do the simplification, you are going to get 35.186 henries. This is my coefficient of self-inductance. The only thing that is left here is I calculated L and I need to calculate di by dt. So from the data, if you see, if the excitation current switches off in 0.1 seconds linearly, that means here, what is the excitation current they have mentioned? If you see, so the excitation current, I hope they have given even the excitation current. Let me try to see the question. Carries a current of 4 amperes. That means they have given the data of excitation current. So let us try to see. With respect to time, if I try to draw the magnetizing current, initially it is at 4 amperes. Now the moment here, let us assume I switched off this particular excitation current. Okay, so the moment if I switch off the excitation current, will it instantaneously reaches to 0? No, because it is having an inductive coil. So obviously, so it is going to decrease linearly. Okay, so here they have mentioned specifically that it is decreasing linearly. How much time it is taking to decrease to 0 amperes? It is taking 0.1 seconds. Okay, so within 0.1 seconds it is decreasing. Are you following what I am saying? So that means I can able to calculate the rate of change of current with respect to time. So if I try to calculate the rate of change of current with respect to time, I can able to get di by dt, right? So my magnitude of self-induced EMF will be equal to L value I know 35.186 into di by dt. Okay, rate of change of current with respect to time. Okay, so you can calculate the slope formula, right? So slope 0.1, so di by dt 4 minus 0 divided by 0.1. So you can calculate the magnitude. You can able to get di by dt, rate of change of current from 4 to 0 within a time of how much? 0.1. So you will get 4 by 0.1. So if you do the simplification, you are going to get the self-induced EMF as 1407 volts. So this is how we need to solve the questions related to the coefficient of self-inductance, mutual inductance, as well as induced EMF, self-induced EMF, mutual induced EMFs, as well as we can able to even calculate the force acting on the conductors. So I hope you understand this particular lecture. So in the next lecture, we are trying to start with what is the purpose of studying electrical machines. Okay, thank you, all the very best.